Welcome to happy2050.org. We are back with part 2 of our guide to talking with skeptics about the climate and energy crisis. And here is where we left things at last time. We decided to set aside, at least for now, all concerns on climate change and assess the severity of a potential energy crisis on its own merits. To determine if there is even a crisis, the first logical question to tackle is this one. Are we indeed running out of fossil fuel? The question in itself is a bit misleading because, phrased like it is, the answer is an obvious yes. Oil, coal, and natural gas have been formed over hundreds of millions of years, and we're burning it really fast. We burned the same amount of fossil fuel between 1980 and 2000 than between 1859 and 1980. So our appetite has been growing fast. What that means is that fossil fuels production rate will peak, then decline, in average of course, no matter what we do or don't do. When shall we run out of fossil fuel might seem like a better question to ask, but it turns out that it's also misleading. The answer, though a little less obvious, is never. There will still be oil in 2050 or even 2200, but the price and the quantity available won't allow the billions of people on Earth to live the way they aspire to. So reserves availability is only part of the story. The other part has to do with production. Oil represents about 40% of worldwide energy sources, so let's pay attention to oil first. What is essential to understand is when production will stop growing as fast as demand does, because when this happens, we will all start fighting for a resource that, if equally shared, will provide less than the vital minimum for all. Looking at the statistics of oil-proved reserves, you may think that we're worrying for no good reason, because as you can see, proved reserves keep growing over the years. The problem is that this growth is not due to the discovery of new oil underground. New discoveries have actually gone dramatically down since 1960. The ultimate reserves estimates have been stable for the past 30 years, so when reports show an increase in proved reserves, it means that some of the unproven reserves, previously classified as probable or possible, have become proven. Another source of misguided optimism is when proved reserves are expressed in multiples of a given year's consumption. For instance, in 2001, proved reserves were 41 times the 2001 consumption of oil. This fact gets roughly translated as, well, we'll still have 40 years of tranquility ahead of us. This is wrong at many levels. First, it may take 60 or 80 or even 100 years to extract oil from proved reserves as the production rate starts to decline. Also, in the last 30 years, our consumption has not remained constant, but increased by an average of 2% each year. So 41 times the 2001 consumption represents far less than 41 years of tranquility. There is no final answer to the question, when will oil production peak? Estimates range from 2010 to 2030, but the order of magnitude is here. The decline of oil production will start in less than a generation. We have less than a generation to prepare for this radical change. Now, since we decided for this discussion to set aside all concerns about greenhouse gases emissions and climate change, the case can be made that non-conventional oil, coal, and natural gas can handily replace conventional oil. Assuming that we could use indifferently any fossil fuel to run our economy with no restrictions at all, like the fact that reserves and productions are mainly elsewhere than where consumers are, with all the political instability it can create, if we set all of these restrictions aside, how many extra years of energy profusion can we gain by doing so? It turns out that it would take us less than a century to burn everything. So here we are. The end of fossil fuel profusion will happen before 2100, no matter what. It will actually happen sooner for oil. With this in mind, it is certainly better to deal with the decline than to let it happen to us. Which leads us to one last point to discuss. What does it mean to manage the decline of fossil fuel availability? For the answer to this question, please join us next time at happy2050.org.